Welcome, weary traveler, to a journey back through time. Find yourself a comfortable place to rest. Perhaps dim the lights around you and let your breathing slow to match the gentle rhythm of distant waves. Tonight, we sail together to the year 1715, to the sun-scorched waters of the Caribbean Sea, where pirates ruled the trade winds and democracy was born from desperation and greed. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. In through your nose for 6 slow counts. Hold for a moment, then release through your mouth for 6 counts more. Feel your shoulders drop, your jaw relax as we drift back 3 centuries to a world where the line between civilization and chaos was as thin as the horizon itself. You are about to experience a full day in the life of a Caribbean pirate. From the pre-dawn darkness when hammocks creak with restless sleep, to the phosphorescent wake that trails behind your vessel as night watches begin. This is not the romanticized world of Hollywood adventure, but the harsh, brutal, and surprisingly democratic reality of men who chose the sea over the scaffold, freedom over security, and brotherhood over the rigid hierarchies of colonial society. Feel the salt air on your skin, taste the tang of brine on your lips, and hear the constant whisper of wind through rigging as we begin our journey. The ship beneath your feet is home to perhaps 80 souls, each bound by articles of agreement that would make modern Democrats weep with envy. Yet this equality was born not from noble ideals, but from the simple recognition that when death lurks behind every horizon, every man's life depends on every other man's loyalty. Your eyelids might already feel heavy as we settle into this tale, heavy as the tropical air that hangs over the Caribbean in the pre-dawn hours. Let that weight settle through your body, from your forehead down to your toes, as natural as the settling of an old ship's timbers in the gentle swell. Before any man stepped aboard this vessel, before a single sail was raised or cannon loaded, there was the signing of the Articles. Picture, if you will, a humid evening in Port Royal or Tortuga, where the air thrums with mosquitoes and the distant sound of revelry from the taverns. In a dimly lit room above a grog shop, perhaps 20 or 30 men gather around a scarred wooden table, the flickering light of whale oil lamps casting dancing shadows across weathered faces. The Articles of Agreement were more than mere contract. They were constitution, law, and social compact rolled into one. Each man present had his voice heard, his vote counted equal to any other, whether he was a skilled navigator or a simple powder monkey. The captain himself, that figure of ultimate authority on the high seas, could be voted out of office by simple majority if his leadership proved wanting. Yemidi. Listen to their voices, rough with rum and salt air, as they debate the fundamental questions of their floating society. How shall the plunder be divided? What punishment for desertion? What compensation for those who lose limb or life in service to the crew? The shares are allocated with mathematical precision. The captain receives 5 or 6 shares, the quartermaster 4 or 5, skilled craftsmen like the carpenter or gunner 3 shares, while the common seamen receive 1 share each. Even the ship's boys, some no older than 12, receive their half share, ensuring that loyalty is rewarded regardless of age or station. You might already feel your eyelids grow heavy as these democratic deliberations continue deep into the night. The pirates vote on everything, whether to attack a particular prize, which course to set, even what punishment to mete out to those who break the sacred articles. In this, they are centuries ahead of their time, practicing a form of radical democracy that would not be seen again until the American Revolution. But democracy among pirates was born from necessity, not philosophy. When your life depends on the man beside you, when cowardice or treachery means death for all, then every voice must be heard, every grievance addressed. The quartermaster, elected by the crew, serves as their advocate and judge, settling disputes and ensuring fair treatment. His word is law in all matters save battle, when the captain's authority becomes absolute. The men sign their names or make their marks by lamplight, each signature binding them to a brotherhood that transcends nationality, race, or background. English deserters stand beside escaped slaves, French buccaneers beside Spanish renegades, all united by their rejection of the rigid hierarchies that governed life on land. Here, a man's worth is measured not by his birth or connections, but by his courage, his skill, and his loyalty to the crew. Piet. As the articles are signed and witnessed, there is perhaps a moment of solemnity, a recognition that they are embarking on a path from which there may be no return. The life of a pirate is brutish and often short, marked by violence, disease, and the constant threat of the gallows. Yet it offers something that the civilized world cannot: the chance to be truly free, to live by one's own rules, to share equally in both fortune and misfortune. Feel your breathing slow and deepen as we leave that lamplit room and step aboard the ship that will be home for months or years to come. Tomorrow, the real work begins. 4 o'clock in the morning comes early aboard a pirate vessel, announced not by church bells or roosters, but by the sharp blast of a boatswain's whistle cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. The sound pierces the close, humid air of the lower deck, where 80 men sleep packed together like cargo in hammocks strung barely 2 feet apart. You wake to a symphony of discomfort, the creak and groan of hemp rope under strain, the soft sighs and muttered curses of men reluctantly leaving their dreams, the constant whisper of water against the hull. The air is thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, tar, wet canvas, and the ever-present dampness that permeates every corner of a wooden ship in tropical waters. Your hammock sways gently with the ship's motion, that cradling rhythm that becomes as familiar as your own heartbeat. Rolling out of your hammock requires a practiced twist and drop, bare feet hitting the deck with a soft thud that joins the chorus of similar sounds as the crew awakens. The deck beneath your feet is damp with condensation and worn smooth by countless bare soles. Between the hammocks, men move like ghosts in the dim light filtering down from the hatch above, pulling on their few articles of clothing, adjusting their crude leather belts, checking their knives. The call to deck swabbing is both routine and ritual, a daily cleansing that serves practical and psychological purposes. The men stumble topside into the pre-dawn twilight, where the first hint of gray light touches the eastern horizon. The air is cooler here, carrying the endless whisper of wind through rigging and the gentle splash of waves against the hull. Stars still prick the dome of sky overhead, though their light grows paler with each passing minute. The work begins with the simple drop of rope buckets over the side, the splash barely audible as they hit the water and sink. Hand over hand, the men haul up bucket after bucket of seawater, the rope rough against palms, already calloused by months of shipboard labor. The water comes up cold and clean, carrying with it the sharp scent of brine and the promise of another day under the Caribbean sun. Yes, the deck swabbing is methodical, almost meditative in its repetition. Swish, swish, swish go the crude mops, spreading seawater across the already damp planking. The sound becomes hypnotic, a steady rhythm that matches the gentle rise and fall of the ship. Each man works his assigned section, the water sluicing back and forth with the ship's motion, carrying away the dirt and debris of the previous day. This daily ritual serves purposes beyond mere cleanliness. A wet deck is a safer deck, less likely to become slippery with spray or blood when action comes. The salt water helps preserve the wood, preventing rot and pest infestation. But perhaps most importantly, it reinforces the democratic nature of pirate society. Here, there are no servants or masters. Every man, from the captain to the newest recruit, takes his turn with mop and bucket. Watch the men work in the growing light, their movements economical and practiced. Some whistle tunelessly, others mutter prayers or curses in a dozen different languages. The rhythm of their labor matches the ship's motion, creating a harmony between man and vessel that landlubbers can never understand. The water sloshes and gurgles as it runs through the scuppers, carrying away the night's accumulation of dirt and salt. As the eastern sky lightens from black to deep blue to pale gold, the work continues. The holy stones come out, blocks of soft sandstone used to scrub the deck white and smooth. The men kneel on the wet planking, working the stones back and forth with religious devotion, their movements creating a soft grinding sound that mixes with the whisper of wind and water. The phosphorescent wake that trails behind the ship in the darkness begins to fade as daylight approaches. The ocean around the vessel shifts from black to deep blue to the brilliant turquoise that marks the shallow waters of the Caribbean. Flying fish break the surface in silver arcs, their wet wings catching the early light. In the distance, a line of darker blue suggests the presence of other islands, other possibilities, other prizes. The work is hard, but not harsh, performed by men who understand that their survival depends on their cooperation. There is a companionship in shared labor, a quiet satisfaction in seeing the deck emerge clean and white under their ministrations. The sun continues its climb, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, promising another day of blazing heat and tropical beauty. As the deck work nears completion, the men begin to anticipate the next ritual of the day, the morning meal. Stomachs growl in harmony with the ship's creaking timbers, and the thought of food, however poor, brings a quickening to their movements. The bosun's whistle will soon sound again, calling them to breakfast and the beginning of another day's adventures on the Spanish Main. The morning meal aboard a pirate vessel is a study in making do with whatever fate and fortune provide. As the ship's cook emerges from his galley, a cramped space barely large enough for one man to turn around, the crew gathers on deck with their wooden bowls and battered tin cups. The cook, usually a man too old or too injured for more strenuous duty, ladles out portions with the solemnity of a priest distributing communion. The centerpiece of breakfast is hardtack, those dense, unleavened biscuits that can last for months without spoiling. Each man receives his portion, examining it carefully in the growing daylight. The wise pirate always checks his hardtack before eating, for these biscuits are notorious for harboring weevils, small brown beetles that bore through the dense bread and lay their eggs within. The sound of men tapping their hardtack against the deck or their cups creates a rhythmic drumming as they attempt to dislodge any unwelcome protein. Some men have learned to appreciate the weevils, recognizing them as a source of fresh protein in a diet otherwise dominated by preserved foods. Others pick them out fastidiously, flicking the tiny insects overboard with practiced motions. The hardtack itself is nearly flavorless, its main virtues being its durability and the way it expands in the stomach, providing at least the illusion of satiety. The hardtack is washed down with the morning grog ration, a mixture of rum and water that serves as both beverage and medicine. The rum, fiery and harsh, is mixed with water in a ratio that depends on the ship's supply and the captain's generosity. To this mixture, the wise cook adds a squeeze of lime juice, though few of the men understand why this addition is so important. The lime juice helps prevent scurvy, that dread disease that causes teeth to fall out and wounds to reopen, though the science behind this prevention remains a mystery to most. Take a moment to taste this meal in your imagination. Feel the coarse texture of the hardtack against your tongue, the burn of the rum as it slides down your throat. Let the detail drift away as you contemplate the simple act of eating, the way it anchors men to life even in the most challenging circumstances. The conversation over breakfast is subdued, men still shaking off the fog of sleep and contemplating the day ahead. Some discuss the weather, reading signs in the color of the sky and the behavior of the wind. Others speculate about possible prizes, ships that might be spotted before the day is done. The talk is punctuated by the sounds of eating, the scrape of spoons against wooden bowls, the quiet slurp of grog being sipped, the soft crunch of hardtack being broken. The ship's boy, usually the youngest member of the crew, moves among the men with a large pot of what passes for coffee. This bitter brew is made from roasted grain rather than coffee beans, as true coffee is a luxury beyond the reach of most pirates. The drink is hot and bitter, with a smoky flavor that comes from the charred grain. It serves its purpose, helping to wake the men and warm their bellies before the day's work begins. As the men eat, they discuss the subtle signs of vitamin deficiency that mark the pirate's life. Swollen gums that bleed at the slightest touch, loose teeth that ache constantly, skin that bruises easily and heals slowly. These are the prices paid for a life at sea, where fresh fruits and vegetables are rare luxuries. The older pirates share their knowledge of which plants on various islands can ease these symptoms, creating an oral tradition of maritime medicine passed down through generations of sea rovers. The morning meal also serves as a time for the quartermaster to address any concerns or grievances from the crew. This elected official, second only to the captain in authority, listens to complaints about food distribution, work assignments, or personal disputes. His judgments are swift and usually fair, for he knows that his own position depends on the crew's continued confidence in his leadership. As the meal concludes and the men begin to clean their simple utensils, the sun climbs higher in the sky, promising another day of tropical heat and endless labor. The empty bowls are rinsed with seawater and stowed away. The cook disappears back into his galley to begin preparations for the midday meal, and the crew prepares for the morning watch duties that will occupy the next several hours. The morning watch brings with it the endless cycle of maintenance that keeps a wooden sailing ship functional in the harsh marine environment. As the sun climbs higher and the day grows warmer, the crew disperses to their various tasks, each man knowing his role in the complex choreography of shipboard life. The rigging, that complex web of ropes and cables that supports the masts and controls the sails, requires constant attention. Hemp rope, no matter how carefully made, is subject to stretching, fraying, and eventually breaking under the constant strain of wind and weather. The men assigned to rigging duty climb with practiced ease up the ratlines, those horizontal ropes that serve as ladders up the ship's sides. Watch them as they work, these skilled seamen moving with the confidence of men who have spent years learning their trade. The ratlines creak under their weight, and the ship's motion is magnified the higher they climb. At the top of the mainmast, perhaps 80 feet above the deck, even the gentlest swell becomes a sweeping arc through space that would terrify a landsman. The futtock shrouds require particular attention, these angled ropes that support the upper sections of the mast. The men examine each line carefully, looking for signs of wear or damage. A broken shroud in a storm could mean the loss of a mast, and without masts, a ship is helpless. The technical terms roll off their tongues like incantations. Backstays, forestays, halyards, sheets, each with its specific function in the complex system that harnesses the wind. The work is performed with a casual competence that belies its danger. A slip at this height means certain death, yet the men work without safety lines, trusting in their skill and the callous strength of their hands. They splice damaged lines with practiced movements, their fingers working the strands of hemp with the dexterity of surgeons. The repaired sections are often stronger than the original rope, bound together with techniques passed down through generations of sailors. Below them, other men work on the sails themselves, those great sheets of canvas that transform wind into motion. The sails are spread on deck for inspection, revealing patches of every conceivable material. Canvas from other sails, pieces of clothing, even lengths of silk taken from captured vessels. Each patch tells a story of storms weathered, battles fought, and the endless ingenuity required to keep a ship functional far from any port. The needle and palm used for sail repair are tools of precision in the hands of skilled seamen. The heavy canvas requires special techniques, each stitch carefully placed to distribute stress evenly across the fabric. The men work in pairs, one holding the material taut, while the other sews, their movements synchronized like dancers performing a familiar routine. The clew lines, those ropes that control the lower corners of the sails, are examined with particular care. These lines bear tremendous stress when the ship is sailing hard, and their failure can result in torn sails and lost speed. The men test each line's strength, looking for signs of internal damage that might not be visible from the outside. As the morning progresses, the sun climbs higher, and the deck begins to radiate heat that will soon become oppressive. The men work steadily but without haste, conserving their strength for the long day ahead. The rhythm of their labor creates a peaceful counterpoint to the ship's motion, the soft sounds of rope work and canvas repair mixing with the ever-present whisper of wind and water. The ship's carpenter, a man whose skills are particularly valued, works on more complex repairs. His tools are simple but effective. Adze, auger, hammer, and saw, all designed for the specific challenges of shipboard carpentry. He examines the deck planking for signs of rot or damage, testing each board with the point of his knife. Where he finds soft spots, he marks them for replacement, knowing that a weakened deck could prove catastrophic in heavy weather. The morning watch also includes the vital task of checking the ship's water barrels and food stores. The cooper, responsible for maintaining the barrels that hold the ship's precious fresh water, examines each container carefully. A leak in a water barrel is a serious matter, for fresh water is literally more valuable than gold when you're weeks from the nearest port. The barrel staves are checked for tightness, the hoops for rust, the bungs for proper sealing. As the men work, they share stories and observations, creating the social bonds that make their harsh life bearable. They speak of other ships they've served on, other captains they've known, other storms they've weathered. The talk is punctuated by the sounds of their labor and the calls of seabirds that wheel overhead, hoping for scraps from the ship's galley. The morning watch duties continue with methodical thoroughness, each task performed with the knowledge that lives depend on careful attention to detail. The ship is both home and tool, sanctuary and weapon, and its maintenance is a sacred trust shared by every man aboard. As the sun approaches its zenith, the pace of work begins to slow, and thoughts turn to the midday meal and the brief respite it will provide from the endless cycle of labor. The noon hour approaches with the solemnity of a religious ritual, marked by ceremonies that have been performed aboard ships for centuries. The ship's navigator, one of the most skilled and respected men aboard, emerges from his cabin with his instruments. The cross-staff, the backstaff, and the precious quadrant that allows him to measure the sun's height above the horizon with remarkable accuracy. The process of determining the ship's position is both art and science, requiring precise timing and careful observation. As the sun reaches its highest point, the navigator takes his sighting, adjusting his instruments to measure the angle between the sun and the horizon. This measurement, combined with knowledge of the date and careful calculation, will reveal the ship's latitude with surprising accuracy. The crew gathers to watch this daily ceremony, for their lives depend on the navigator's skill. Lost at sea with no knowledge of position, a ship can sail in circles until supplies run out and the crew dies of thirst. The navigator's calculations are performed with the solemnity of a priest conducting mass, each step verified and recorded in the ship's log. Timekeeping at sea is a constant challenge, for accurate navigation requires knowing not just position, but also the exact time. The ship carries several sand glasses, hourglasses filled with fine sand that runs from one chamber to another in precisely measured intervals. The ship's boy assigned to watch the glasses calls out each half hour, and the glasses are turned to begin their cycle anew. The noon gun is a tradition that serves both practical and ceremonial purposes. As the navigator confirms that the sun has reached its zenith, a single cannon is fired, its boom echoing across the water and marking the official beginning of the afternoon. The sound is both celebration and signal, announcing to any other ships in the area that noon has arrived and that time is being properly kept. The cannon used for this purpose is usually one of the smaller guns, but even so, its report is impressive. The crew covers their ears as the gunner applies the slow match to the touch hole, and the weapon erupts in flame and smoke. The ball is fired harmlessly into the ocean, but the psychological effect is significant. It reminds everyone aboard that they are not just sailors, but warriors, armed and ready for whatever challenges the sea might bring. The smoke from the noon gun drifts slowly downwind, its acrid smell mixing with the salt air and the tar that permeates every corner of the ship. The sound of the cannon shot echoes and fades, leaving behind the usual sounds of wind and water and the creaking of the ship's timbers. The crew disperses to their various duties, but the significance of the moment lingers. Another day has been successfully navigated, another position fixed, another step taken in their endless journey across the vast Caribbean. At 10. The navigator retreats to his cabin to perform the complex calculations that will determine the ship's exact position. Using tables of declination and careful arithmetic, he converts his noon sighting into a line of latitude. Combined with his dead reckoning calculations based on course and speed, this will give him the ship's position with an accuracy that would amaze landlubbers of his era. The cross-staff, one of the primary navigation instruments, is deceptively simple in appearance, but requires great skill to use effectively. The navigator holds the instrument at arm's length, sliding the crosspiece along the staff until the sun appears to sit exactly on the horizon. The angle can then be read from markings on the staff, providing the crucial measurement needed for position calculation. The backstaff, a more advanced instrument, allows the navigator to measure the sun's altitude without looking directly at it, reducing eye strain and improving accuracy. The instrument uses a system of mirrors and shadows to align the sun with the horizon, and its readings are generally more reliable than those obtained with the cross-staff. As the noon ceremonies conclude and the crew settles into the rhythm of the afternoon watch, there is a sense of satisfaction in routine properly observed. The ship's position is known, the time is marked, and the endless cycle of navigation continues. The sun, now at its highest point, begins its slow descent toward the western horizon, promising another blazing afternoon in the tropical Caribbean. The tropical sun at its zenith transforms the ship's deck into a furnace, the wooden planking too hot to touch with bare skin. The men seek whatever shade they can find, crowding into the shadows cast by the sails and rigging. The heat seems to press down from above like a physical weight, making every breath an effort and every movement a trial. The blazing sun brings with it a host of ailments that plague sailors in tropical waters. Blisters form on exposed skin with alarming speed, the harsh combination of sun and salt air creating painful burns that refuse to heal in the humid conditions. The men learn to cover themselves as completely as possible, wearing long sleeves despite the heat, wrapping cloth around their heads and necks to protect against the merciless rays. Dehydration is a constant threat, made worse by the limited supply of fresh water and the crew's tendency to ration it too severely. The men learn to recognize the early signs: the parched mouth, the headache, the weakness that seems to emanate from the very bones. The temptation to drink seawater is strong, but the experienced sailors know that this will only worsen their condition, the salt drawing even more moisture from their bodies. The ship's water barrels, those precious containers that hold the crew's most vital resource, are subject to constant contamination in the tropical heat. The wooden staves expand and contract with temperature changes, sometimes allowing seawater to seep in and spoil the entire contents. Even when properly sealed, the water often develops a foul taste and smell after weeks at sea, thick with algae and populated by small insects that somehow find their way into the supposedly sealed containers. The common ailments of tropical sailing create a constant background of suffering that the men learn to endure with stoic resignation. Bilge fever, a mysterious illness that strikes without warning, leaves its victims burning with fever and racked with chills. The symptoms include severe headaches, aching joints, and a weakness that can last for weeks. Some men recover completely, others carry the effects for the rest of their lives, and some die, despite all efforts to save them. Dysentery, that dread disease of the bowels, spreads through the crew with terrifying speed in the close quarters of the ship. The symptoms are both painful and embarrassing, leaving grown men weak as children and unable to perform their duties. The ship's limited medical supplies are quickly exhausted in treating the afflicted, and the crew learns to rely on folk remedies and prayer. Malaria, carried by the mosquitoes that breed in the stagnant water found on many tropical islands, strikes with a pattern of fever and chills that can persist for years. The men learn to recognize the onset of an attack, the sudden chill that no amount of blankets can warm, followed by the fever that makes them feel as if they're burning from within. The disease weakens its victims progressively, and many pirates carry its effects to their graves. The heat affects not just the men, but the ship itself, causing the wooden hull to expand and contract in ways that open seams and create new leaks. The tar used to seal the gaps between planks becomes soft and sticky, requiring constant renewal. The iron fittings expand and sometimes break under the stress, creating new maintenance challenges for the crew. And at Dasta, notice how your own body feels lighter as you contemplate these hardships. The way the modern comforts of air conditioning and clean water seem almost miraculous compared to the trials faced by these men. The heat they endured was not just uncomfortable, but genuinely dangerous. A constant threat to health and survival that they faced with remarkable courage and resilience. The ship's surgeon, when one is available, becomes a figure of crucial importance during the hot months. His limited knowledge and primitive tools are all that stand between the crew and death from tropical diseases. He bleeds patients to reduce fever, administers purgatives to cleanse the system, and dispenses what medicines he has with careful rationing. His success rate is low, but his presence provides psychological comfort to men facing illness far from any proper medical care. The afternoon heat also affects the ship's food supplies, accelerating spoilage and attracting insects. The salt pork becomes rancid more quickly, developing an oily film and a smell that can be detected from considerable distance. The ship's biscuit softens and becomes moldy, providing ideal breeding conditions for weevils and other pests. The crew learns to eat quickly during the hottest part of the day before the food becomes completely inedible. As the sun begins its slow descent toward the western horizon, the heat gradually becomes more bearable, but the effects of the midday inferno linger. The men move slowly, conserving their strength, drinking small sips of their precious water ration and seeking whatever relief they can find. The promise of evening brings hope for cooler temperatures and a respite from the tropical furnace that has tested their endurance once again. The afternoon watch brings with it the sudden urgency of combat preparation. as the lookout's cry of "Sail ho!" electrifies the crew. Whether the distant vessel proves to be friend or foe, merchant or warship, the response is always the same. Prepare for battle with the efficiency born of countless drills and the sobering knowledge that failure means death. The transformation of the ship from peaceful sailing vessel to instrument of war is remarkable in its speed and thoroughness. The crew moves with practiced precision, each man knowing his exact role in the complex choreography of preparation. The peaceful deckwork of the morning gives way to the controlled chaos of men preparing to fight for their lives and their freedom. And the guns must be run out, those great iron cannons that are the ship's primary weapons. The gun crews work with smooth coordination, removing the tampions that seal the muzzles, checking the touch holes for obstruction, and ensuring that the firing mechanisms are in perfect working order. The sound of iron wheels on wooden deck creates a rumbling thunder as the guns are rolled into position, their black muzzles protruding menacingly through the open ports. The deck must be cleared for action, a process that involves removing or securing everything that might interfere with the gun crew's work. Hammocks are rolled and stowed, personal belongings are locked away, and the ship's livestock is moved to safety below decks. Sand is spread on the deck to provide better footing and to absorb any blood that might be spilled during the coming action. The powder magazine, that most dangerous place on the ship, becomes a hive of activity as the powder monkeys begin their deadly work. These young men, often boys barely into their teens, are responsible for carrying charges of gunpowder from the magazine to the guns. The work requires speed, courage, and absolute attention to safety, for a single spark could destroy the entire ship in an instant. The magazine itself is a marvel of maritime engineering, designed to store hundreds of pounds of gunpowder in relative safety. The walls are lined with lead to prevent sparks, and the deck is kept constantly damp to reduce the risk of fire. The powder barrels are arranged with mathematical precision, each one clearly marked with its contents and condition. The powder monkeys work in teams, one boy staying in the magazine to fill the leather cartridges with precise amounts of powder, while others carry the charges to the guns. They move barefoot to reduce the risk of sparks, their movements quick but careful. The filled cartridges are passed from hand to hand up the narrow companionways, each transfer a potential moment of catastrophe if proper care is not taken. The stress of possible naval engagement weighs heavily on every man aboard. The experienced pirates know that battle at sea is not the romantic adventure portrayed in tavern songs, but a brutal test of courage, skill, and luck. Cannonballs can shatter bones and tear limbs from bodies. Splinters from the ship's own wood can blind and maim, and the smoke of battle can be so thick that men cannot see their own hands in front of their faces. The gun crews check and recheck their equipment, ensuring that everything is in perfect order. The rammers used to seat the charges are inspected for cracks or damage. The sponges used to clean the gun barrels are soaked in water, and the slow matches that will ignite the charges are carefully prepared and lit. Each gun requires a crew of 6 to 8 men, all working in perfect coordination to achieve the maximum rate of fire. The ship's carpenter prepares for his wartime role, gathering his tools and materials to repair battle damage as quickly as possible. Wooden plugs are ready to seal shot holes below the waterline. Canvas and tarred rope are prepared for emergency sail repairs, and the carpenter's mates position themselves where they can respond quickly to any damage the ship might suffer. Yet even as the crew prepares for battle, there is a voice of reassurance that speaks to the deeper part of their consciousness. Tonight, no battle will come. The distant sail may prove to be a merchant vessel heavy with treasure, or it may be a warship that thinks better of engaging with a well-armed pirate vessel. The preparations continue with methodical thoroughness, but somewhere in the back of every man's mind is the knowledge that they have survived countless such encounters before, and they will survive this one as well. The waves keep their steady rhythm beneath the ship, unchanged by human plans for violence. The sea itself remains indifferent to the struggles of men, providing the same support for pirate and merchant alike. The rhythm of the waves becomes a counterpoint to the urgent preparations, a reminder that the ocean's peace will continue long after the immediate crisis has passed. The afternoon watch continues with the ship ready for action, the crew poised for battle, yet somehow confident that they will see another sunset. The distant sail draws closer, and soon its identity will be known. Until then, the men wait with the patience of predators, ready to strike if opportunity presents itself, ready to flee if the odds prove unfavorable. but always ready to fight if fighting becomes necessary. As the immediate crisis passes and the distant vessel proves to be neither threat nor worthwhile prize, the ship's atmosphere gradually shifts from tense preparation to relaxed vigilance. The guns are secured but remain loaded. The crew stands down from battle stations but maintains their readiness. The afternoon settles into a more peaceful rhythm, one that allows for the social activities that make the hard life of a pirate bearable. The democratic nature of pirate society shows itself most clearly during these leisure hours, when the rigid hierarchy of naval discipline gives way to a more egalitarian approach to shipboard life. The crew gathers in small groups on deck, some clustered around dice games that have been running for days or weeks, others listening to the ship's fiddler as he plays the traditional tunes that remind them of home. The dice games are serious affairs, despite their casual appearance. Men wager their shares of future prizes, their personal belongings, even their portions of the ship's limited liquor supply. The ivory dice, worn smooth by countless hands, click against the wooden deck with a sound that becomes almost musical in its repetition. The players study each other's faces for signs of deception, their ability to read character honed by years of living in close quarters, where trust can mean the difference between life and death. The ship's fiddler, a grizzled veteran whose weathered hands still retain their cunning on the strings, plays the melancholy tunes that speak to the hearts of men far from home. His instrument, battered by years of sea air and rough handling, produces a sweet, mournful sound that carries across the water. The melodies are those of England, Ireland, France, and Spain, the musical heritage of men who have left their homelands far behind, but carry their memories in the songs they sing. The tales shared during these leisurely hours are a mixture of truth and fantasy, adventure and warning. Old pirates speak of storms that lasted for days, of battles won against impossible odds, of treasures found and lost. The younger men listen with rapt attention, learning not just the facts, but the wisdom that comes from experience. These stories serve as both entertainment and education, passing down the accumulated knowledge of generations of sea rovers. The elected quartermaster moves among the groups, his presence a reminder that even in leisure, the ship's democracy continues to function. He settles disputes with the authority granted him by the crew's vote, his decisions accepted because they know he speaks for their collective will. A disagreement over the dice game's outcome, a dispute over the distribution of tobacco, a complaint about work assignments, all are brought to him for resolution. The punishments meted out by the quartermaster are often harsh by modern standards, but they reflect the crew's understanding that survival depends on maintaining order and discipline. A man caught cheating at dice might lose his share of the next prize, while more serious offenses could result in marooning on a deserted island. The legendary punishment of having one's ears cut off for theft is not merely a threat, but a reality that keeps most men honest. The waves keep their steady rhythm beneath the ship, providing a constant backdrop to the human drama playing out on deck. The sound of water against the hull becomes so familiar that it fades into the background, noticed only when it changes rhythm to indicate a shift in weather or sea conditions. The crew has learned to read these subtle changes, to interpret the sea's movement. The waves keep their steady rhythm beneath the ship, providing a constant backdrop to the human drama playing out on deck. The sound of water against the hull becomes so familiar that it fades into the background, noticed only when it changes rhythm to indicate a shift in weather or sea conditions. The crew has learned to read these subtle changes, to interpret the sea's moods, like farmers read the sky for signs of rain. Then, the afternoon leisure continues with the easy camaraderie of men who have faced death together and emerged victorious. They share their meager tobacco, rolling crude cigarettes in scraps of paper or packing clay pipes with the precious leaf. The smoke drifts lazily in the tropical air, its acrid sweetness mixing with the salt tang of the sea breeze. For many, tobacco is their only luxury, a small comfort that makes the hardships of their life more bearable. The ship's cook emerges from his galley to join the social gathering, wiping his hands on a greasy apron and settling onto a coil of rope with a grunt of satisfaction. His presence signals that preparations for the evening meal are well underway, and the crew begins to anticipate the simple pleasure of hot food after a long day of labor. The cook shares gossip from the galley, observations about the ship's supplies, and complaints about the quality of the provisions that make the men laugh despite their accuracy. Some of the crew occupy themselves with practical tasks that serve double duty as leisure activities. Sailors carve intricate designs into pieces of whalebone or wood, creating scrimshaw art that will serve as mementos of their time at sea. Others work with rope, practicing fancy knots and splices that demonstrate their skill while serving no immediate practical purpose. These activities keep their hands busy while their minds relax, a necessary balance in the confined world of the ship. The ship's musician produces other instruments from his collection. A small drum made from a goatskin stretched over a wooden hoop, a wooden flute carved from a single piece of tropical hardwood, and a crude but effective trumpet fashioned from brass taken from a captured vessel. The music he creates is simple but heartfelt, providing a soundtrack for the afternoon that lifts the spirits and reminds the men that beauty can exist even in their harsh world. The conversation during these relaxed hours ranges widely, touching on practical matters, philosophical questions, and personal dreams. The men discuss the merits of different types of vessels, debate the best tactics for taking a prize, and share knowledge about the various ports and islands scattered throughout the Caribbean. They speak of women they have known, families they have left behind, and the dreams of wealth that drew them to this dangerous life. The democratic nature of their society is evident in the way every man's opinion is heard and considered, regardless of his rank or experience. The newest member of the crew can speak his mind as freely as the most experienced pirate, and his words carry weight if they demonstrate wisdom or insight. This equality is both practical and philosophical, reflecting the crew's understanding that their survival depends on utilizing every man's knowledge and abilities. As the afternoon progresses and the sun begins its slow descent toward the western horizon, the pace of activity gradually slows. The dice games conclude with their winners and losers accepting their fate with equal grace, knowing that fortune is as changeable as the wind. The fiddler's tunes become more melancholy, reflecting the approaching evening and the subtle melancholy that seems to affect all sailors as day turns to night. The waves continue their eternal rhythm, unchanged by human activity, providing a constant reminder of the sea's dominance over all who venture upon its surface. The men have learned to find comfort in this rhythm, to let it lull them into a state of peaceful acceptance of their place in the larger scheme of things. The sound becomes a meditation, a way of connecting with something larger and more permanent than their individual struggles. The afternoon leisure period serves multiple purposes beyond simple entertainment. It provides a necessary release from the constant stress of life at sea, allows for the social bonding that keeps the crew functioning as a unit, and reinforces the democratic principles that govern their society. These peaceful hours are as important to the ship's success as the more dramatic moments of battle and storm, for they maintain the morale and cohesion that make everything else possible. As the sun continues its descent and thoughts turn to the evening meal, the crew begins to stir from their relaxed positions. The leisure time is ending, but its effects will linger in the renewed sense of camaraderie and the reinforced bonds that hold the crew together. The waves keep their steady rhythm, promising another peaceful evening as the ship continues its eternal journey across the vast Caribbean waters. The evening meal begins as the sun hangs low in the western sky, painting the Caribbean waters in shades of gold and crimson that would inspire poets if any poet sailed with this rough crew. The ship's cook emerges from his galley with the day's main meal, a stew that represents both the creativity born of necessity and the democratic sharing of whatever fortune has provided. The foundation of the evening stew is salt pork, that preserved meat that forms the backbone of maritime nutrition. The pork has been soaked since morning to draw out some of the harsh salt that preserves it, then boiled with whatever vegetables the ship's stores can provide. Today's addition includes dried peas, hard as pebbles when dry, but softening into a thick, nourishing porridge when cooked long enough. The peas provide protein and substance, filling bellies that have worked hard throughout the long day. Ship's biscuit, the same hardtack that served for breakfast, is broken into chunks and added to the stew, where it absorbs the cooking liquid and becomes more palatable than when eaten dry. The biscuit adds bulk to the meal while providing the carbohydrates necessary for heavy physical labor. The weevils that might inhabit the biscuit are considered an acceptable addition to the protein content, their presence so common that the men no longer comment on it. The cooking liquid itself is a triumph of maritime improvisation, created from seawater that has been boiled to reduce its salt content, combined with whatever fresh water can be spared from the ship's precious supply. The resulting broth has a distinctive flavor that no landlubber has ever tasted, a combination of salt, meat, and the subtle influence of the wooden barrels and iron pots used in its preparation. The crew gathers on deck for the meal, their wooden bowls and crude spoons reflecting the golden light of the setting sun. The democratic nature of their society is evident in the way the food is distributed. Each man receives an equal portion regardless of his rank or responsibilities. The captain eats the same stew as the newest crew member, and both pronounce it good or bad with equal freedom. The sunset itself becomes part of the dining experience, as the men pause between spoonfuls to watch the daily spectacle of day turning to night. The sun hangs like a glowing coal above the horizon, its light creating a path of molten gold across the water that seems to lead directly to the ship. The sky above transforms from blue to purple to deep rose, with clouds catching and reflecting the changing light in patterns that never repeat. The lanterns are lit as the natural light begins to fade, their yellow glow creating pools of warmth and intimacy on the deck. The lanterns are precious items, carefully maintained and jealously guarded, for their light is essential for the ship's nighttime operations. The glass chimneys are cleaned daily, the wicks trimmed to ensure clean burning, and the whale oil that fuels them is measured out with careful precision. The transition from daylight to lamplight marks a subtle shift in the ship's atmosphere, as the harsh realities of daytime sailing give way to the more mysterious and romantic aspects of life at sea. The men's voices become softer, their conversations more intimate, as the circle of light from the lanterns creates a sense of community and shared purpose. Biaz. The evening meal is eaten slowly, not from any abundance of food, but from the recognition that this peaceful time is precious and should not be hurried. The men savor not just the taste of the simple stew, but the companionship of their messmates, the beauty of the tropical sunset, and the satisfaction that comes from another day successfully navigated through the dangers of their chosen life. The conversation over dinner ranges from practical matters to philosophical observations, with the older pirates sharing their wisdom and the younger men absorbing lessons that might save their lives in future encounters. They discuss the subtle signs that indicate changes in weather, the best methods for attacking different types of vessels, and the locations of hidden harbors where pirates can find shelter and supplies. The warmth of the evening air and the gentle motion of the ship combine to create an atmosphere of peace and contentment that contrasts sharply with the violence and danger that are never far away in a pirate's life. The men joke and laugh, their harsh voices softened by the twilight and the satisfaction of full bellies. The sounds of their conversation mix with the ever-present whisper of wind and water, creating a harmony that speaks to the deep human need for community and belonging. As the meal concludes and the men begin to clean their simple utensils, the last light of day fades from the western sky. The transition to full darkness will bring new challenges and responsibilities, but for now there is this moment of peace and satisfaction, illuminated by the warm glow of the lanterns and warmed by the bonds of brotherhood that make their dangerous life bearable. Indeed. The colors of the sunset linger in memory even as they fade from the sky, their beauty a reminder that even in the hardest life, there are moments of transcendent beauty that make all the struggles worthwhile. Encourage your mind to visualize these colors, then let them fade gently to the peaceful gray of evening, as natural as the ending of another day in the endless cycle of life at sea. As darkness settles over the Caribbean waters like a soft blanket, the ship transforms into a different world entirely. The night watches begin their rotation, a system as old as seafaring itself that ensures the vessel remains safely navigated through the hours when most of the crew sleeps. The transition from day to night watch marks one of the most significant changes in the ship's daily rhythm, as responsibility for 80 lives passes to a small group of men whose vigilance must not waver until dawn. The watch system divides the crew into groups, each responsible for 4-hour periods of duty throughout the night. The first watch takes responsibility as full darkness falls, their eyes gradually adjusting to the subtle variations in darkness that will guide them through the night. These men must learn to see by starlight and moonlight, to distinguish between the shadows of clouds and the darker shadows that might indicate land or other vessels. The phosphorescent wake that trails behind the ship becomes one of the most beautiful and mysterious phenomena of the night sea. As the vessel moves through the water, tiny marine organisms called dinoflagellates are disturbed by the ship's passage, causing them to emit a cold, blue-green light that creates a glowing trail stretching back into the darkness. The wake appears as a river of liquid starlight, beautiful beyond description, yet serving as a practical reminder of the ship's course and speed. The men on night watch learn to read this phosphorescent display like a book, understanding how its intensity and pattern reveal information about the ship's movement through the water. A bright, straight wake indicates good speed and a steady course, while a dim or irregular wake might suggest problems with steering or changes in wind conditions. The phosphorescence also makes the ship visible to other vessels, a consideration that becomes crucial when trying to approach a prize without being detected. The rotating watches ensure that fresh eyes are always available to scan the horizon for signs of danger or opportunity. The lookouts position themselves at strategic points around the ship, their night-adapted vision capable of detecting details that would be invisible to someone just emerging from the lamplit areas below decks. They watch for the telltale signs that indicate other vessels, the pale blur of a sail against the stars, the brief flash of a lantern, or the subtle disturbance in the water's surface that suggests something moving in the distance. Ends. The fear of ghosts and sea monsters that permeates maritime folklore becomes more understandable during the long night watches. The darkness plays tricks on tired eyes, turning clouds into phantom ships and waves into supernatural creatures. The men share stories of supernatural encounters to pass the time, tales of ghost ships sailing without crews, sea serpents rising from the depths, and the spirits of drowned sailors calling out warnings from the water. The deadlights on the horizon become a source of particular fascination and fear. These mysterious lights, probably caused by atmospheric phenomena or distant lightning, appear as pale glows that seem to dance on the water's surface. The superstitious sailors interpret them as omens, harbingers of storms, or supernatural visitations. The lights appear and disappear without pattern, sometimes bright enough to illuminate the horizon, sometimes barely visible even to the most careful observer. The ship's bell marks the passage of time throughout the night, its bronze voice calling out the half hours with mathematical precision. The sound carries across the water for remarkable distances, serving as both timekeeper and location beacon. The bell's tone changes subtly with weather conditions, becoming muffled in fog, sharp and clear in cold air, and somehow more resonant during the calm periods that often precede storms. The night watch rotation ensures that no man stands duty for more than 4 hours at a time, preventing the dangerous drowsiness that could lead to missed signals or navigational errors. The changing of the watch is marked by a brief ceremony as the relieved men pass along information about weather conditions, observed phenomena, and any concerns that the incoming watch should monitor. This transfer of responsibility is taken seriously, for the safety of the ship depends on maintaining continuity of observation and decision-making. The men on watch move quietly through their duties, conscious that their shipmates are trying to sleep in the cramped quarters below decks. They check the ship's heading by compass and stars, adjust the sails as wind conditions change, and maintain the careful balance of forces that keeps the vessel moving safely through the night. Their voices, when they must speak, are kept to whispers that carry just far enough to be heard by their intended recipients. The ocean night sounds become a familiar symphony to those who stand regular watches. The constant whisper of water against the hull, the rhythmic creaking of rigging under strain, and the occasional splash of a fish jumping or a bird diving for prey. These sounds create a peaceful background that can lull the unwary into dangerous inattention, making the discipline of regular watch rotation even more crucial. The night sky over the Caribbean provides a spectacular display of stars unobscured by the light pollution that would later plague more civilized areas. The men learn to navigate by these celestial landmarks, recognizing the patterns that indicate direction and the subtle changes that mark the passage of seasons. The stars become old friends, reliable guides that have led sailors safely across the world's oceans for thousands of years. The bell continues its steady marking of time, each strike a reminder that another half hour has passed safely, bringing the ship closer to dawn and the beginning of another day. The sound becomes almost hypnotic in its regularity, a bronze heartbeat that measures the ship's progress through both time and space as she continues her eternal journey across the vast Caribbean waters. The tropical night occasionally brings weather that tests the skill and courage of even the most experienced pirates. Though tonight the memories of past storms serve only to emphasize the blessed calm of the present evening. The men on watch share stories of the great gale they survived 3 months past, their voices dropping to respectful whispers as they recount nature's awesome power and their own narrow escape from its fury. The storm they remember began as a subtle change in the wind's direction, a shift so slight that only the most experienced sailors noticed it at first. The sea, which had been relatively calm, began to show the long, slow swells that often precede major weather disturbances. The crew, trained by hard experience to read these signs, began their preparations with the methodical thoroughness that could mean the difference between survival and destruction. The wind built gradually at first, then with increasing violence, until it howled through the rigging like a chorus of banshees. The waves grew from manageable swells to towering walls of water that dwarfed the ship, each one threatening to overwhelm the vessel and send her to the bottom with all hands. The rain came in sheets so dense that visibility dropped to mere yards, and the men could barely hear each other's shouts over the storm's deafening roar. The crew worked through that long night in conditions that would terrify landsmen, securing everything that could be secured, reducing sail to the minimum necessary to maintain steerage, and manning the pumps that kept the ship from foundering as water found its way through stressed seams and overwhelmed scuppers. Every man knew that his survival depended on the skill and courage of his shipmates, and no one faltered despite the terror that gripped them all. The ship rode the mountainous seas like a living thing, climbing each wave with agonizing slowness, hanging suspended for a heart-stopping moment at the crest, then plunging down the backside in a controlled fall that seemed certain to end in destruction. The vessel's timbers groaned and flexed under the enormous stresses, but the careful craftsmanship of her builders held true, keeping her together through the worst that nature could unleash. The men tell these stories in past tense, their voices soft with remembered fear and present gratitude, for they know how fortunate they were to survive such an encounter. Many ships and crews have been lost to storms like that one, their fate unknown until wreckage washes ashore weeks or months later. The sea keeps its secrets well, and the number of vessels that have simply disappeared without trace is beyond counting. But tonight the sea is gentle, the wind steady but not threatening, the waves no more than comfortable swells that rock the ship with maternal tenderness. The contrast between the remembered storm and the present calm fills the men with a deep appreciation for their current circumstances. The ocean that nearly destroyed them months ago now cradles them like a mother rocking her child to sleep. The storm imagery serves as a reminder of the sea's dual nature, capable of both nurturing and destroying with equal ease. The same waters that provide highways for commerce and adventure can become death traps for the unwary or unlucky. This knowledge makes every peaceful night precious, every calm passage a gift to be treasured rather than taken for granted. The low pass-filtered thunder that rumbled through that memorable storm exists now only in memory, its power diminished by distance and time, but still capable of sending a chill down the spines of those who heard it at full volume. The brief flash of lightning that illuminated the chaos has faded to a gentle memory, no longer frightening but somehow beautiful in retrospect. The men pause in their storytelling to take deep breaths of the calm night air, filling their lungs with the sweet oxygen that seemed so precious during those hours, when every breath was a struggle against wind and spray. The simple act of breathing becomes a meditation on survival, a recognition of how fragile life can be in the face of natural forces beyond human control. Tonight the sea is gentle, the ship secure, and the crew safe in their floating home. The storm exists only in memory now, a reminder of trials overcome and dangers survived. The waves lap softly against the hull, their rhythm as soothing as a lullaby, promising peaceful sleep for those whose watch has ended and restful vigil for those who remain on duty. The night continues its gentle progression toward dawn, marked by the steady chiming of the ship's bell and the quiet conversations of men who have faced the worst the sea can offer and emerged victorious. The storm they survived has become part of their shared history, a bond that unites them more strongly than any formal oath or written agreement could accomplish. As the night progresses toward its peaceful conclusion, the ship continues her steady progress across the calm Caribbean waters. The men on watch perform their duties with the quiet confidence of sailors who have weathered every challenge the sea can present. The memory of past storms serves only to deepen their appreciation for the present calm, and their voices carry a note of gratitude as they mark the passage of another safe hour in their endless journey across the vast ocean. The final hours before dawn bring a special quality to the night watch, a sense of completion and anticipation that marks the end of another successful day at sea. The men on duty feel the subtle shift in the ship's atmosphere as the night deepens toward its darkest hour, then begins its slow turn toward morning. The stars overhead wheel through their ancient patterns, marking time with celestial precision that has guided sailors since men first ventured beyond sight of land. The last watch of the night carries special responsibilities, for these men will guide the ship safely through the transition from darkness to light, ensuring that dawn finds the vessel properly positioned and ready for another day of sailing. Their eyes, perfectly adapted to the darkness after hours of night vision, scan the horizon constantly for any signs of change in weather or the presence of other vessels. The phosphorescent wake continues to trail behind the ship, that magical river of living light that transforms their passage through the dark waters into something approaching poetry. The men never tire of watching this phenomenon, finding in it a reminder that even the darkest night contains elements of beauty and wonder. The wake tells the story of their journey, a glowing autobiography written in the language of disturbed plankton and reflected starlight. The ship's motion through the gentle swells creates a rhythm that becomes almost hypnotic during the quiet night hours. The rise and fall of the deck, the soft creak of timbers working in their age-old pattern, the whisper of wind through the rigging all combine to create a symphony of motion that speaks to something deep in the human soul. This is the music of the sea, as old as seafaring itself, and as eternal as the tides. The men on watch find themselves drifting into a meditative state, their consciousness expanding to encompass not just their immediate duties, but their place in the larger patterns of sea and sky. They feel connected to all the sailors who have stood similar watches throughout history, part of an unbroken chain of maritime tradition that stretches back to the first humans who dared to venture beyond the safety of land. The conversation during these final hours becomes philosophical, touching on questions that seem more profound in the darkness than they would in daylight. The men discuss their reasons for choosing this dangerous life, their hopes for the future, and their understanding of their place in a world that considers them criminals, but which they see as the last bastion of true freedom. The night air carries scents that tell stories of distant lands, the spice-laden breeze from islands still below the horizon, the salt tang that speaks of deep ocean currents, and the subtle vegetal smell that indicates the presence of floating seaweed. These olfactory clues help the experienced sailors maintain their sense of location, even when visual landmarks are absent. The ship's bell continues its faithful marking of time, each strike bringing them closer to dawn and the beginning of another day's adventures. The sound has become so familiar that it barely registers in their conscious minds, yet its absence would be immediately noticed and cause for alarm. The bell is both timekeeper and heartbeat, measuring the ship's progress through both space and time. The deadlights on the horizon have faded or shifted, those mysterious glows that sparked supernatural speculation earlier in the evening now reduced to faint memories or distant gleams that might be natural phenomena or the imagination of tired eyes. The boundary between reality and fantasy becomes blurred during the deep night hours, when the mind seeks patterns and meaning in the random play of light and shadow. The men feel the weight of the coming day beginning to settle upon them, the knowledge that dawn will bring new challenges and responsibilities. Yet, there is satisfaction in having successfully navigated another night, in having maintained their watch over the sleeping ship and brought her safely through the hours of darkness. Each peaceful night is a victory against the forces that conspire to destroy ships and sailors. The tropical air remains warm and humid even in the pre-dawn hours, a reminder that they sail in waters far from their northern origins. The climate here is both blessing and curse, providing warmth that makes their outdoor life tolerable, while threatening them with diseases and discomforts unknown in cooler latitudes. They have adapted to this environment with the resilience that marks all successful sailors. The stars begin their slow fade as the first hint of dawn touches the eastern horizon, though the change is so subtle that only the most experienced eyes detect it at first. The night watch prepares for the gradual transition of responsibility to the day crew, knowing that their vigil is nearly complete. They have successfully guided the ship through another night, and soon their shipmates will awaken to begin another day's journey across the endless Caribbean. The cycle begins anew as the ship continues her passage through waters that have known the keels of countless vessels, each carrying its cargo of human dreams and ambitions. The night watch will soon end, but the eternal rhythm of the sea continues unchanged, as it has for millennia and will for millennia to come. The waves maintain their steady rhythm, indifferent to human struggles, but somehow supportive of human hopes. The peaceful conclusion of another night at sea brings with it a deep sense of satisfaction and gratitude. The ship has remained safe, the crew has performed their duties with skill and dedication, and the dawn promises another day of freedom and adventure on the vast Caribbean waters. The men prepare for the changing of the watch, ready to pass their responsibilities to fresh hands while they seek the rest they have earned through their faithful vigil. Inni. As the long night draws toward its close and the first hints of dawn begin to touch the eastern horizon, the ship and her crew settle into the final phase of their nocturnal journey. The night watch, their duties nearly complete, begin the gradual process of preparing for the transition to day, their movements careful and measured as they maintain the vigilance that has kept the vessel safe through the dark hours. The recap of this long and exhausting pirate day reveals the extraordinary complexity of life aboard a Caribbean sailing vessel in the year 1715. From the pre-dawn darkness, when the crew awakened in their cramped hammocks, to these final moments before another dawn, every hour has been filled with labor, danger, fellowship, and the constant awareness that survival depends on the skill and cooperation of every man aboard. The day began with the democratic signing of articles that bound the crew together in a brotherhood more egalitarian than any government of their time. These men, outcasts from conventional society, created their own form of civilization based on principles of equality and shared responsibility that would not be widely accepted for generations to come. Their floating democracy, born from necessity and maintained by mutual dependence, represents one of the most remarkable social experiments in human history. The physical demands of their life have been constant and unforgiving. From the pre-dawn deck swabbing that began their day to the night watches that will continue until sunrise, the crew has performed the endless cycle of maintenance and navigation that keeps a wooden ship functional in the hostile marine environment. Their bodies bear the marks of their chosen profession: calloused hands, sun-darkened skin, and the subtle scars that come from years of working with rope, canvas, and iron in all weather conditions. The meals they have shared, simple and often unpalatable by modern standards, represent more than mere sustenance. The hardtack and grog, the salt pork stew and ship's biscuit, these basic foods have provided not just nutrition, but opportunities for fellowship and democratic discourse. The equal distribution of food, regardless of rank or station, reinforces the egalitarian principles that govern their society and distinguishes them from the rigid hierarchies of naval or merchant vessels. The work they have performed throughout this long day demonstrates the incredible variety of skills required for success at sea. Navigation and seamanship, carpentry and sailmaking, gunnery and medicine. Each crew member must possess multiple competencies to ensure the ship's survival. The democratic nature of their society means that knowledge is freely shared, creating a learning environment where the newest recruit can benefit from the accumulated wisdom of the most experienced pirates. The leisure activities that have punctuated their day reveal the human need for beauty and companionship, even in the harshest circumstances. The music and storytelling, the games and conversations, serve purposes beyond mere entertainment. They maintain morale, strengthen social bonds, and preserve the cultural traditions that connect these men to their diverse origins while creating new traditions suited to their unique way of life. The preparation for combat that marked their afternoon demonstrates the serious nature of their profession and the constant threat that shadows their existence. These men have chosen a life that places them outside the protection of law and civilization, making them both hunters and hunted in the vast Caribbean waters. Their survival depends on their willingness to fight and their skill in the arts of war. Yet their democratic principles ensure that no man is forced into battle against his will. The tropical environment that surrounds them presents its own challenges and rewards. The blazing heat that tested their endurance, the diseases that threaten their health, the storms that can destroy their ship in minutes, all are balanced against the beauty of Caribbean sunsets, the gentle trade winds that speed their passage, and the abundance of islands that provide shelter and supplies for those who know where to look. The night watches that will continue until dawn, represent perhaps the most critical aspect of their shipboard life. The safety of 80 men depends on the vigilance of a few, their eyes adapted to darkness and their minds alert to dangers that might emerge from the vast ocean around them. The phosphorescent wake that trails behind their ship serves as both navigation aid and reminder of their passage through waters that have known countless vessels before them. As you drift toward sleep, remember that these men have found something precious in their dangerous life: true freedom, genuine democracy, and the brotherhood that comes from facing death together and emerging victorious. Their ship continues her passage through the Caribbean night, guided by skilled hands and watched over by faithful eyes, carrying her crew safely toward another dawn and another day of adventure on the Spanish Main. The gentle reminder settles over you like the tropical night air. You are safe and supported in your own rest, surrounded by comforts these hardy pirates could never have imagined. Your bed is soft where theirs was hard rope. Your room is quiet where theirs was filled with the constant sounds of wind and water. Your rest is secure where theirs was always threatened by the dangers of their chosen life. Let the rhythm of the waves carry you toward peaceful sleep, as they carried these brave men through countless nights on the vast Caribbean. Feel the motion of the ship as she rises and falls with the gentle swells, her timbers creaking with the comfortable sounds of a well-found vessel making good progress through friendly seas. The night watch continues their vigil. The stars wheel overhead in their eternal patterns, and the sea maintains its ancient rhythm that has lulled sailors to sleep since time began. The ocean continues its whisper against the hull, that soft, constant sound that becomes the heartbeat of life at sea. Let this rhythm match your own breathing, slow and steady, deep and peaceful, as natural as the rise and fall of the tide. The ship sails on through the Caribbean night, her wake glowing with phosphorescent fire, her crews safe in their hammocks or alert at their posts, all moving together toward whatever adventures the dawn might bring. Your eyelids grow heavy with the weight of salt air and the satisfaction of a day well lived. Whether in your own time or in the imagined world of Caribbean pirates 3 centuries past, the boundary between past and present fades like the stars at dawn, leaving only the eternal rhythm of the sea and the promise of peaceful rest. Sleep comes easily now, supported by the gentle motion of the ship and the knowledge that brave men stand watch through the night, ensuring safe passage until morning comes again to the endless Caribbean waters.